it's a goal. Who got the assist? Who got the assist?
Hello there. So I know it's late, apologies, but I was out in Bristol this weekend and couldn't record from my nan's house. She's got no Wi-Fi, bless her. So a very, very quick podcast tonight. Just to quickly shout out those who attended the Bristol meetup on Saturday. It was a really great day. And in particular, a shout out to Tom, FPL Face Off, for organising it, and my two drinking buddies for a lot of the time, especially on Friday night, Dara the Tinkermen and Andy Bloody Martin. It was a great laugh, and I thoroughly recommend going along to one if you see one in your area. I'll be doing the London one on the 12th of November, so get along to that if you can. Anyway, we are, or in this case, I am, who got the assist. You can find me on Twitter at WGTA_FPL, and my usual co-host Lucy is at Lucy Hynett with two T's. As I mentioned, a very swift pod today, just to relay how I've gotten on this weekend just gone, usual updates like the mini league and market forces, then a short view, I think, on some of the key questions I've seen floating around on social media, finally ending with where I am with my team. Although I'll probably end up, voicing over these things as I go off tangent when I'm doing kind of the main flow. So, 20, 30 minutes tops, maybe, due to the fact that when you listen to this, I'm sure the deadline is probably looming. Just for the record, it's Monday, the 17th of November, and I'm sorry if you're watching on YouTube, no video today because I didn't have time to put one together. I got back about an hour ago. Anyway, game week update. How did I do? So, 52 points for me, the game week just gone. I bought in
Matthew Doherty, the artist formerly known as Matt Doherty.
This week for Reece James, who got injured. So last pod, obviously, I was didn't really know what I was going to do. Made the decision for me, and he got a clean sheet, which was nice. It would have been an assist if Kane hadn't have gotten that second shot, before the penalty. The star mem were him and Ivan Toney. He got his brace. I was watching that game on Friday night in the pub with Dara and Andy. Me and Dara both had Tony, and poor old Andy had Sanchez and Trossard, who got subbed early. So good night for the two of us, a bad night for Andy, unfortunately. And those two guys on live rank being kind of the big differentials meant that I had a green arrow pretty much. Like when Tony scored his brace, it was really good because I felt like I was in a good position for a green arrow this week. Everything else is pretty standard. So the Mitrovic penalty, the City guys blanked, obviously. I mean, it was so close on so many occasions to Haaland and KDB combining. I think there were a couple of them in the first half, which were kind of, in retrospect, really costly. And it would have been something that would have changed the game and probably would have popped up the score this game week. I kind of wanted De Bruyne to do well, but never mind. And the ruled out goal, of course, would have been an assist. And I think that Cancelo put the ball over, and that the Van Dijk intervention. So another Haaland goal potentially there. And also had Maddison and Bowen, who again blanked, and Maddison got the yellow card. Clean sheets from Trippier and Pope at the back really helped stay the course, though. And I thought that full-time whistle there seems to take an eternity to come when I was watching the live score. And it was such a relief when it arrived. I mean, I watched match of the day later on. Huge misses from Fred and Rashford. So I'm glad that game wasn't live because my heart would have gone, I'm sure. And yeah, as I mentioned earlier, that Maddison last minute yellow was a bit annoying. So he is now suspended the next game. And that card is basically now worth 5 points lost because it's nailed me into probably needing to take a hit this week to come. More of that in a minute. And Bowen's blank was a bit annoying, but watching him back on Match of the Day, I think he could have got 2 or 3 assists. So Skamaka, unfortunately, had one of those days where he couldn't hit a barn door. And they took 25 shots in that game, West Ham, and Bowen only took 2, and they were block shots. I don't even know if they count towards the 25, but fine to keep hold of. Anyway, that 52 in sum took me up from 8.1k to 6.8k. So I guess what on paper a small green, but obviously in the 4 figures, unfamiliar territory, of course, for me, that's actually pretty substantial. Now, 16% rank rise. So pretty pleasing as I scored a particularly mediocre amount this week. And that meant that Lucy, who has Zaha over Bowen, scored 1 more point than me to get 53 with the rest of our teams identical. I think she's up to about 40k or so. So again, solid progress from her and solid progress from both of us. Moving on to mini league update very quickly. Up top, it's still Lewis Gamby, who I heard is also top of the Aura Cheating Super League as well. So doing very, very well this year, Lewis. Just the 43 this week, though, for him. In second, it's Daninger Stenhaug United, 56 this week. Daninger comes up to second from 5th. In third, it's Robin Smith with Yartin Leverett, Haaland captain for him. In fourth, down from third, it's Robin Hill by Jonathan Arkless. Now, he captained Son this week for 6 points, but it's still a gain, I suppose, over Haaland. In fifth, it's Henry Dean, back of the net over 56 this week. Actually, he and Bryce Layeur, who was top for a while, but he's down from third. Both Henry and Bryce joint on 722 points. 1 point in it. In seventh, that is Rowan Uzenbrug with Sloughin Powers United, 48 points from him this week. In eighth, for non-mover, Peaky Blinders, Eric Nuguna. In ninth, it's Padraig Sheehan with Paddy's team, 62 points. And in 10th, big rise for Dave Hughes. He's up from 84th to 10th off the back of a very good week. 67 points for Dave this week. Owned Slanky, owned Tony, and owned Salah. So a big jump for Dave, which is very good. Well done, everybody. And I'm sure it will change a lot over the course of the next week. Market forces then, just to move there very quickly. Quite a lot of ins and outs from the last time I checked. No surprise at all that Mo Salah is top of the transfers in. I think when I checked last night, he was about 24.5%, now up to over 30%, so 32% ownership at the moment. I'm sure that may well get to 40 and maybe in the top 10K, as I'll speak about later, in the run 100% for captaincy next week. In second, it's Mason Mount following his brace in the game versus Villa. 339,000 transfers in for him. In third, it's Trossard. 162,000 transfers in for Trossard with that enticing Forest game up next. In fourth, it's the ultra consistent figure of Kieran Trippier. 200,000 transfers in for Trippier. And speaking of consistency, Ivan Toney, 200,000 transfers in for him. In terms of players being sold, it's Reece James, who was injured. Of course, 700,000 transfers out for Reece. Potter has said that we don't know when he'll be back yet, so yeah, it makes a lot of sense to get rid of him. Maddison, because of that yellow card, sold by almost 500,000 managers at the moment. I'm guessing that's why people are buying Trossard and Mount, those owners starting to split off and diverge. In third most sold, that is, it's Gabriel Jesus. Ownership down to 61% or so now. 440,000 transfers out for Jesus. Still hasn't got that fifth yellow card yet, but a blank against Leeds and a bit of a quiet game by his standards. In fourth, Kevin De Bruyne, almost 300,000 transfers out for the Belgian. Again, that blank coming up. And in fifth, people selling Luis Diaz, who's not expected to be back for quite a while. A couple of other things that I noticed when I was just trawling through. Foden has been bought by 100,000 managers, and Saka has been bought by 88,000 managers. So, yeah, people obviously not really cognizant of what's going to happen next week. And in the sales, 150,000 sales for Haaland and 130,000 sales for Martinelli. Ouch. Like, if people have owned them since the start of the season and are just selling because they've seen a blank, they need 1.4 million more than the initial price for those guys if those sellers want to buy them back. So yeah, I guess fairly straightforward. I'm surprised some people have gone for Mason Mount. He did perform very well against Villa and has a discounted price of now he's up 7.7 now. So we'll have to see what happens there. But yeah, I'm really hoping people start to sell Saka and Foden because that's a bit annoying. Right, main questions to my mind this week. I didn't take any from Twitter just because I didn't really have time to do that, getting home and stuff. But I thought I'd just mention a few of the key questions I've seen kind of floating about this week and give my take on it. Be very short and sweet. Should I take a hit? Question one. I know loads of you probably already have, to be fair. The first question I'd ask myself, I was looking at my team, is how bad is it? If I've got a wild card, can you use it a week early? So if you're planning to go into game week 13, I can see an argument to do it now, unless it starts to get really, dodgy in terms of going, okay, well, I need to have 5 City and Arsenal, so maybe this isn't the week, etc., etc. If not, and you don't fancy free hitting or you haven't used it, and you're taking out a non-playing player, that's probably okay. We've been talking about the past few pods being comfortable with a lack of a concrete plan. And I think that remains the case here. So, I purposely kept it open even this game week by bringing in the Irish Matthew and not using the second transfer. And now, because I've got Maddison problems to deal with, I've suddenly got to take a hit. So it wasn't entirely planned in, but hey, sometimes needs must. And if it helps you get, 10, 11 players out, absolutely fine. And you can also use the old school logic that if you're taking out a non-playing player, it's a -2. So that's absolutely cool. I mean, how that works, if that's new to you, is that the player who you bring in is likely a starter. So you're 2 points up on selling a non-starter, which means it's perceptually easier to legitimate the hit because you can say, all right, they just need to do something. Even if a midfielder keeps a clean sheet, then you're only 1 point down you need to hope for a return still, but normally you need to hope for, I think it's 7 points to make it worthwhile. Here it's a lot smaller in order to get a quote unquote profit. I suspect most are in kind of the hit boat with Maddison ruled out. But if you don't take a hit this week, you'll start the week, I think, with an upper hand, which is quite good. Next question, I'm sure some people are asking. I think my sister asked me this actually. I've got 7 or 8 men. Should I take a free hit? So if you've got your wild card, you're probably in an unfortunate situation now where you may have to consider the possibility of taking the free hit. I think the overall value of doing that versus taking points hits is actually going to be closer because I'm sure there's going to be a better occasion later on to use the free hit. I'm not the man to ask about calendar stuff as I've spoken about in the past, but I feel like the unknown in terms of when that could be more effective, especially if everybody else is saving their free hit, may make me want to think again. I guess you need to look at your team and think about what the decision would be in terms of your team in game week 13 if you took the free hit this week, because you'll get the same team back next week. And if it does look good, then maybe you might consider it. I suppose in terms of when I would be considering it in terms of players, the threshold would be probably if I was on 8 players after transfers, then I'd think about it. But if you can get to 9 or 10 this week, that's probably okay. And to be honest, it could, as I said earlier on, I think loads of people are looking at a hit. So it could be a good week to hide a hit too, if you're okay to absorb a temporary poor result and kind of set your team up well for the last 4 game weeks before we go into the World Cup break. I also feel a bit skeptical about the team you can put together on free hit this week, by the way. So it's truly down to you on that. As I said, probably, if I can get 9 or 10 players out, I wouldn't be thinking about a free hit. I don't think there's going to be that many people in that much bother. And if you are, and if you get the vibes from the free hit team you've put together, then sure. But I think I try to manage it to avoid using that. Best defensive option. So I've seen quite a few people talking about this just because of the Reece James situation, etc., etc. I think it's all fixtures based as far as I'm concerned at this point, just because of the lack of the premium. I mean, obviously there are Liverpool who I'll speak about in a second, but I think here would be my kind of hierarchy of buys in if I was looking to buy a defender this week. The top choice team that I buy a defender from is Newcastle. So I have Trippier and Pope. I am not looking at Newcastle, but if you've only got Trippier, then I don't think it would be the worst idea in the world to get a defender like Botman, who I saw today has never lost as a Newcastle player, and double up on them for 1 week versus Everton, because Botman, Shah, etc. are all a price that you can comfortably just buy them this week, then bench them after that. Good fixture this week versus Everton, and Newcastle are 5th best for expected goals against, which is very impressive given the fact they've played City, Liverpool, and United, and they also played Brighton under Potter thus far. So very, very good defensive unit there, as you saw against Man United, although they did get quite lucky, of course, to keep that clean sheet. With Trippier and Pope in place for me, and I'm assuming loads of people who wildcarded kind of in game week 7, game week 8, I think looking at the fixtures, the one with the best lot are probably Palace, given the fact their run to the World Cup break comprises Wolves, Everton, Saints, West Ham, and Forest. So not the best XGA so far. They're 5th from bottom for that figure, but they've had a really rough start to the season in terms of playing Arsenal, Liverpool, City, Newcastle, and Chelsea thus far. So you can contextualize that data. So someone says, "Oh, look at them. They've been rubbish this season." That's probably why we're now in a kind of a spate of fixtures where you can own one of those players and probably be all right. And they kind of fit nicely into that sort of stage of being a player you could happily field or just have as your kind of first or second bencher. So, if you've already got Gahey, for example, at the moment, you're probably pretty set. So you're probably looking at Newcastle, we're looking at a few other teams that I'll speak about. Him or Joe Anderson are absolutely fine. Gahey's 4.3. I think it'll probably be 4.4 by the time you listen to this tomorrow. And Joe Anderson is 4.5. I think it's marginal this year that Joe Anderson has slightly better goal involvement data. Last year, I think it was on Gahey. So I think either one of them is absolutely fine in terms of being nailed and in terms of having good fixtures. I think that kind of is the criteria we're looking at again. It feels very much like that enabler pod from a while ago, doesn't it? If you already own that Palace defender and you're not interested in Newcastle either, maybe look at Nathan Collins at Wolves. I think Kilman's 4.6 now. I don't know about what's going on between Johnny, RAN, etc., etc. I know Johnny did play the last game actually, so maybe him as well. Okay, next four: Palace, Leicester, Brentford, and Brighton. I wouldn't touch Leicester's defense. Still, I just have no conviction. I don't know what happened with Palace. They seem to just set up to get a 0-0 in the early game on Saturday. It wasn't a good game, was it? And Castagna was getting in good position. So, I mean, if you do fancy it, I understand it. I just struggle to kind of get behind buying in one of those players. I know a lot of people are now looking at Brighton. So for one fixture, that's probably absolutely fine. The reason that I'm not really interested in Dunk or a Webster or something is just because City in 13 and Chelsea in 14 don't look good. And I think it might take a while for De Zerbi, who looks a lot like Robert Downey Jr., doesn't he? To sort things out and make them more iron at the back. So I think probably for now I'm going to say no to that. But I know a lot of people are going in on Brighton, so it makes a lot of sense to if you are kind of wanting to cover that off. It's just because I might need this player in game week 13 as well because I've got
Matthew Doherty.
and I've got Emerson Palmieri, who's probably going to be going for the Palace defender, and Neco Williams. The Spurs guys don't think
Matt Doherty
is going to play this weekend. So I think that at the moment I need to make the transfer. I'll talk about it a little bit more in a bit anyway. In terms of a couple of teams you might want to back, Chelsea, is sort of people kind of say, oh, about Cucurella, just go across to him. Obviously got subbed half time in the game. The fixtures just aren't great for Chelsea, honestly. And I was very happy with the Reece James upside. But now I think Potter's just a bit unpredictable while he tries to sort it out there. And the fixtures, as I said, aren't great. So I wouldn't touch them with a barge pole. One thing you could do though is look at Liverpool. So if you've got a lot of money sloshing around, you could buy in Van Dijk at 6.4, Robbo at 6.7, or even go back to Trent if you want to. West Ham, Forest, Leeds, Spurs, and Southampton before the break. Stubbornly mid-table for XGA with the likes of Villa, West Ham, and even Leeds better than them on that metric. But there could be an uptick with the fixtures getting better. One name did stand out a pre-game week, which was Joe Gomez at 4.5, zero goal threat, etc., etc. Matip and Konate both missing. It sounds like Konate may be close to coming back. But if you're on a short-term fix and you fancy a bit Liverpool, then you could go there. But for me, I mean, that's kind of what I'd say at the moment. So if I had loads of money and I was really fancying it, which I don't because I've got to pay for Foden back next week, I might be looking at maybe Robbo or Van Dijk a punt there. Probably looking at Newcastle after that. Maybe actually, on par Newcastle and Liverpool, and then if you don't go there, Palace, and then probably Brighton, and then I'd avoid Leicester and etc. etc. Oh yeah, Wolves, but I'm not interested in Wolves either. And finally, captain this week. So I think Lucy mentioned last week the ex-EO of Salah is going to be irresistible this week. And of course, there was the much improved performance, Liverpool versus Man City in the big game yesterday. So, yeah, obviously touching on last week's pod, he's not been valuable campaign, but there's situational value now, given the fact that he's picking up ownership and you can tell yourself the story that Liverpool are back. And fundamentally, it's just a realpolitik, practical decision for me to bring Salah in. I just can't ignore him now. I know I could be charged with knee jerking after being a bit skeptical on last week's pod, but needs must, I'm afraid. Like the ownership's ticking up, as I said, and especially I now somehow need to worry about top 10k ownership where it will be spiked. I think that's probably going to be what I'll do. And even if he doesn't reach 100%, he's going to be a differential captain. And that's really cool too. I mean, I was listening to Above Average on the train back today, and Baker said, it's not outcomes alone that have influenced people getting Salah, but they've certainly helped. And I completely agree with that. And also, last week I said the data's fine. The sharp relief of the players around him didn't paint that data in the most flattering light. But nonetheless, you've got to roll with what's in front of you. Like, the days when I used to say that, oh, I can't do that because I said it on the pod last week are behind me, that's for sure. And that's not because I'm arrogant or lacking self-awareness like some others. It's just that saying stuff on the pod is what I do, and it's never whimsical, it's never unreasoned, it's always something I look into. But you have to kind of always have that sort of overarching awareness that the game changes. And given the inevitable move in his direction, I just couldn't really avoid that given how I'm doing. So yeah, I mean, if you think I've changed my mind, fair play. I'm always open-minded, to be honest, and I'm just kind of trying to do the right thing here. Remember, it's easy to criticize if you have nothing to say for yourself in the first place, etc., etc. And I think that maybe if you're sat there having not owned Salah or been a no Salahite, but you think, oh wow, I need to get the guy in because my mates or whatever will give me stick. Just think that actually it's better to admit that you've been wrong. You may have been too strong in your views and are changing your mind for good reason. That's perfectly okay and doesn't make you a hypocrite in most cases, unless you're the British government. So yeah, marriage of convenience is probably the best way I can describe buying Salah. Kane is also worth a shout, by the way. Not blank since game week 1, just ticking along very nicely. I have not been given too much ownership coverage here, so I don't own him. But if you do own him and can't get to Salah, I wouldn't necessarily be panicking about wanting to change that over. Kane has just been just as consistent as Mo has. And could well be a captain shout again against Man United. It's just the XEO of Salah is probably going to be pretty high this week. So I think that's probably the one to go to, the standout captain. No, there's lots of sort of emotion bound up in people kind of taking sides, etc., etc. But we're all grown ups here. It's absolutely fine to just go with the obvious move. Right. So where am I at now? To bring us to a close. My team this week is pretty easy. I did like the first early moves I think I've made all season. I made a couple of them yesterday because I thought that Maddison and KDB would drop. They didn't, but hey, I did it anyway. Cashed them in for a nice profit of 0.3 million and brought in the aforementioned Salah and Trossard. Trossard functions as a 1 week punt, basically. He's keeping the seat warm for Foden in game week 13. As I said before, I'm basically using game week 12 as an excuse to indirectly move KDB to Foden. That would be something that I'd be remiss to do in a normal game week, but it's a nice way to kind of disguise that transfer. And Maddison actually did me a favour thinking about it, because if he wasn't ruled out, it might have been a bit sort of awkward because I'd had to probably, sell him or sell Bowen if I got Mo and I wanted Foden back. So it's been quite good because Maddie out means that I can bring a 1 week punt in Trossard and I can accommodate Foden easily and be kind of guilt free to myself, at least, for doing so. And yeah, Salah, as I said. You might also consider Nunez. If there's some people talking about him, Jota's had looking injured. He could be someone who you could think about. And also, I just realised that I should point out that it's possibly nice getting Mo at a bargain price, because remember, he doesn't play over the World Cup either. So in the long haul, if he does start to really tick on again, having him and Haaland secured as the two premiums could give future you a big hand. So another reason, if you're thinking, oh, it's a long-term investment in Mo. But nonetheless, we've got 4 weeks and then things kind of just pause. So hey, short term and long run, it could be possibly a good idea. So yeah, I think both Trossard and Mo are straightforward buys as far as I'm concerned. So having done both of them, I've got a bit of a conundrum. That's because I've got a solid sort of 9. I've got Pope in goal, which is fine.
Matt Doherty,
who seemingly is going to play Trippier at the back, so 2 at the back in this solid 9 at least. See where this is going. Bowen, Andreas, Salah captain, Trossard, and Mitro and Tony up front. So that's the 9. And then I've got 2 other players. They're Neco Williams and Emerson Palmieri. So the 2 players I had to pick up on my wild card to afford Bowen. So the points of, they've given me what I needed from them in terms of, enabling the more expensive pick. But I think now it's probably worth moving one of them on for a hit, my first hit of the season, just because in the long run, there's question marks over
Doherty.
James and Paul O'Keefe, James and Planet that is, both don't think that he plays this weekend, perhaps. Neco, yeah, I mean, there's Aurier there who seems to be injured, perhaps, and there's also, loads of other options there for him. And Emerson has been in and out of the team. So relying on one of those 3 to play every week or start every week for the next 4 is probably not going to be a good idea. So I think what I'll do is have to take a hit for a more sort of stable defender. I'd probably sell Emerson over Neco there. I expect Soddle from both of them. I'm sure Anderson or Gahey, probably Anderson if I buy him in. Probably he doesn't need to do very much to justify the move. And I'll probably keep Neco just because he has decent ownership. That's literally it. Literally it. Oh, and also I've got Tony on 4 yellow cards, which is I didn't realize that until this afternoon. So I'll probably need the trustworthy body there in case things change and I've got other moves to make in 1 week, and that means I can bench Tony and probably be all right. Anderson over Gay, I think money won't matter that much, so I'm going to have 2.3 million in the bank after doing the moves this week. And then after Trossard to Foden, I've got 0.9 million left over there. I think I'll go with Anderson just because loads of people in my mini leagues own Gahey. So maybe the most unsexy differential ever in going for the other Palace defender. But, it doesn't really matter that much, to be honest. But hey, why not take these moments, try to differentiate somewhere? Because at the end of the day, it is kind of, those sort of guys on the fringes of your teams at the moment, which are working as differentials. And hopefully, Salah and Trossard will kind of change things a little bit for people. But it has been kind of just a couple of players here and there just making a difference. So why not follow that up with this sort of defender move? Basically, again, back to the enabler pod. Solid 10 plus Neco this week is what I'll end up with on a hit. I'll keep Cancelo, Martinelli, and Haaland, and I'll add Foden in next week for Mr. Trossard. I'll see what happens after that. I mean, I probably won't be able to buy a premium defender for a little while, but I mean, I'll live with it, and future me can deal with it. And World Cup's only 4 game weeks away after next week anyway. And yeah, Salah captain, as I said. So I think that probably gets me to a strong enough team to contest this week and hopefully keep the green arrows coming. And I think Lucy will pretty much do the same moves as me as we continue our lockstep. Zaha versus Bowen, week 4. I wonder how that goes. But she promises me we will diverge very soon. We will see. The final thing is, I have very low expectations for this game week. Midweek is always absolutely rubbish if it's your first season, particularly. And don't worry if one of your players has to start or something. 1 point from your 11th man will feel like a certified gain this week, that's for sure. And obviously, captaincy will be a huge decider. So with any luck, that's a Salah Hall. But yeah, as we've seen with Haaland as well, just think carefully about your captaincy and where you want to go. Right. There you go. Quick and dirty. Thanks so much for listening. We were, or I was, who got the assist. You can find me on Twitter at WGTA_FPL or Lucy at Lucy Heine with 2 T's. Hope you enjoyed this. Hope I assisted you. Good luck on game week 12. And I'll be back again on Thursday for a very similar style quick podcast, just because free podcast. I haven't got that much time on my hands. So I think this is probably going to be what I'll have to do. I'll be recording from the Netherlands next week as well, because I'm on holiday again. Proper pods will resume next week, so next Monday, when I'm back from the Netherlands on 24th. Okay, all the best this blank game week. Speak to you very soon.
Oh, it's a goal. Who got the assist? Who got the assist?